we kind of have this impression of the internet that it just works. So all of us type in something in the URL bar, www.apnic.net, and instantly this page appears. And for most of us, it is instant. You know, it just happens. But a lot's going on under the hood. And the first thing that actually happens is that you've got to take that alphanumeric name, www.apnic.net, and machinery has to translate that into a protocol address. And that machinery is the DNS. When we were doing some experimentation in looking at DNS performance all over the world, this surprising fact came out. 1/4 of the world's users didn't have lightning fast DNS. It was taking a couple of cycles to sort of resolve this name, that things were slower than they need be. And it's sort of, that's not right, but it was right. So then we started looking, when you actually have a name resolved, you send your query, what address is apnic.net, to a very special machine called a resolver, a DNS resolver. And you might think that that resolver is very close to you. Sometimes it's around the world. Sometimes it's a long way away. And we started looking at the relationship between users and the resolvers they use. It's important for a number of reasons. One of them is that these days, many nation states go, you shall not go to bad site. But the way they do this is by blocking the name in the DNS. And sometimes their motives are good. Other times we've seen it as a form of censorship, like in Turkey or Syria, where they've actually tried to remove certain sites from the internet by removing the DNS. And the result is that folks start using open DNS resolvers. And we've seen a lot of cases where folk go to Google, for example, with their public DNS service. And the reason why they go there is because Google doesn't lie. It gives you the answer no matter what. And so how much of the world uses Google these days? Is it just this bizarre little techo thing used by a couple of people? We're seeing about 15% of the world's users now have all their queries directed into Google's name servers. Overnight, Google is big. But there's something else about this too. When you ask a question of the DNS, it's because you intend to go to that site. So in some ways, if I knew what names people were resolving, I know what sites you're going to. I get a real-time feed of what people are doing. And so the DNS is actually a rich vein of information about, oddly enough, me. Now, who has that information? My local resolver. Well, it may not be my local resolver. It could be the resolver that sits in Iceland or in Sweden or in some other parts of the world. So what I did was actually start looking at what's the relationship between where folk appear to be and the resolvers they appear to be using, and how much of this is across boundaries, across nation states, where what you actually see is your queries are spanning the world and you're telling a whole bunch of other folk about what you're doing. And the real question in this sort of age of, I think, sensitivity about your own privacy online, about your own information about you, is to what extent are you leaking information beyond the boundaries of your national laws? To what extent are you sending your personal information to countries where you are an alien and have no particular rights about privacy of your data? It's an interesting question, and what we're seeing right now is around 5 to 6% of users have their queries somewhere else being resolved by machinery somewhere else. So yes, I always find the DNS fascinating, and that was one of those little things that seemed interesting.